honey, let me tell you, the tension in that courtroom, you could feel it, like electricity humming through the air. Reporters weren't just waiting, they were perched like vultures on the edge of their seats, pins frozen mid-air, eyes glued to those heavy courtroom doors. And when they finally creaked open, silence. Like dead silence. Not even a cough. In walked the man of the hour. Not a celebrity, not a suit with flair, but the guy who actually knew everything, Agent Monroe. Yep, the lead FBI agent who personally oversaw the raid on Diddy's fancy Beverly Hills mansion. No jokes, no dramatics, just raw, cold facts about what they uncovered behind that oh-so-glamorous facade. The judge gave a slow nod. The prosecutor approached, calm on the surface, but you could feel the weight in his voice. Agent Monroe, he began. Tell us what you found inside the hidden vault at Mr. Combs' residence. Whew, even Diddy's team tensed. The air turned thick. And Agent Monroe, he just looked straight ahead, not a flinch. Then he started talking, every word like a gavel hitting granite. There was a hidden vault behind a false wall. Biometric clearance required. Not even the house staff knew it existed. Girl, the collective gas? You'd think the air got sucked out the room. Diddy, sitting there like a statue, hands so tight his knuckles went pale. His lawyers shifted in their seats, looking like they'd just seen a ghost. But wait, it gets juicier. Monroe went on. Inside the vault, we found archives, both digital and physical, labeled folders, encrypted drives, files going back over 20 years. He paused, then dropped the bomb. These weren't just business documents. These were blackmail files, leverage, audio, video, even confessions, all documented and time-stamped. Boom, the room exploded. Not with sound, but with shocked silence. Eyes widened, jaws dropped. Diddy's power? Suddenly very, very real and terrifying. But oh, we're just getting started. Agent Monroe leaned in and added something that sent chills everywhere. There was a handwritten log with names, famous names, labeled as paid, compliant, still useful, or waiting for the right time. Can you even imagine? That's not a scrapbook. That's a control manual. The gallery was trembling. One woman audibly gasped. Even the judge hesitated before striking his gavel. And then the second vault. Oh yes, babes. A room within the vault, locked by its own passcode. In there, Monroe said with zero emotion, we found a safe. We've only begun processing it, but what I can say is that wasn't a panic room. It was a control room. Mic dropped, and you know what? That was just the appetizer. Because when they cracked open those encrypted drives, they found a folder named Pending Insurance. Level Red. I'm not kidding, Level Red. That's FBI talk for stuff so dangerous it could end lives. Inside, videos, secret audio clips, hidden wire transactions, even fake documents meant to destroy reputations if leaked. The court was in full body chills. One man whispered, "Oh my God," while another woman clutched her chest. People were visibly shaking. Agent Monroe made it crystal clear. This wasn't insurance. It was extortion in preparation. He gave an example that made the room freeze. A video of a famous industry executive, drunk, vulnerable, confessing things he shouldn't, secretly recorded by surveillance equipment from Diddy's own guest house. These people had no idea they were being watched, Monroe explained. The recordings were paired with metadata tracking their careers, contracts, even public behavior. Translation: if you crossed Diddy, he had receipts, big ones. Diddy, meanwhile, sat there stiff as a statue, no blinking, no breathing, but the cracks were starting to show, and just when you thought it couldn't go any deeper, it did. Yes, handlers. Inside were scripts, actual scripts on how to manipulate people. Conversation guides, notes on emotional weaknesses, trigger phrases. Monroe said it plainly. These were tactics to extract loyalty, silence, or something worse. And then, one chilling document, Phase 4 Collapse Protocol. It outlined contingency plans. If Diddy was ever arrested or exposed, the document laid out which narratives to spin, which files to leak anonymously, how to flip allies into shields, and how to drown the media in chaos. The prosecutor asked, were these just paranoid fantasies? Monroe shook his head. No, they were structured, professional, created with psychological expertise. It wasn't survival, it was warfare. And the most terrifying thing, a file called Legacy Re-Edit, a roadmap of how to manipulate media, who to pay, which platforms to avoid, notes on grooming journalists, paying PR firms under shell companies, and curating the public image of not just himself, but others. Even the judge's composure slipped. He exhaled and looked away. That courtroom, once a place of law, now felt like a graveyard of illusions. And just when we thought our hearts couldn't take more, Monroe said 2 words. The envelope labeled "For My Eyes Only." B. Inside, a single memory card, still under federal review. But Monroe dropped this on us. What's on that card has already triggered new investigations, and it might redefine everything we thought we knew, not just about Diddy, but about the entire entertainment industry. Silence. Total. And not the peaceful kind. The kind where everyone in the room knew this wasn't just about one man. This was about power, control, fear. And with that, the courtroom was no longer a trial venue. It had become a crime scene. So you remember how everyone in the courtroom was already basically traumatized, right? Well, Agent Monroe had one more twist in that deadly quiet room. He cleared his throat and said, calm as ever, there was one room we didn't expect to find. One more room. Whispers started bubbling again, nervous, anxious. People glanced around like, what more could there be? Monroe explained that the FBI noticed some irregularities in the blueprints of Diddy's home, a space that wasn't accounted for. So they brought in ground-penetrating radar, and lo and behold, they found a sealed chamber. No doors, no obvious entrance, just concrete. It took hours to breach. And what they found? Buckle up. They called it Sub-Zero. Yeah, that was the literal steel label on the wall near the staircase they uncovered. You could feel the oxygen leave the courtroom again. Even the judge leaned forward, visibly disturbed. This wasn't just a vault. It was a vault within a vault. And the vibe? Oh honey, it was dark. Because this room, it wasn't for cash or files or even leverage. This room was for intimidation. There were mannequins. Yes, mannequins. Dressed in exact replicas of clothing worn by real artists. Life-size prints of people's homes. Blueprints of recording studios. And then Monroe's voice dropped. Scripts. Actual written scripts for role-play scenarios. We're talking simulated conversations, guided tactics, rehearsals, all designed to mimic interactions with real people, not for fun, not for performance, but for manipulation. It was like some twisted psychological training center. People in the courtroom were frozen. One juror literally whimpered. The assistant DA looked like he might vomit. And that wasn't even the worst of it. There was a projector set up in that room playing loops. Replays of interviews, performances, behind-the-scenes encounters with Diddy's handwritten notes scribbled over them. Notes like leverage point, emotional weakness trigger phrase, you guys. He was studying people like case studies, not just to silence them, to break them, to own them from the inside out. And then came the wall. One side of the Sub-Zero room had dozens of black and white photographs. Some faces were scratched out, some were circled, each had a date under it. And here's the kicker. Some of those dates matched public meltdowns, contract collapses, overdoses, even disappearances. No proof yet, but coincidences, too many, too clean. Monroe confessed, we don't fully understand all the patterns yet, but what we do know is that people who challenged Diddy often suffered catastrophic personal events within days. Then he pulled out the final piece of evidence from that room, a red notebook. Handwritten, hundreds of entries. Most were rants, ideas, paranoia. But one sentence was written 63 times. Let me say it out loud for the drama it deserves. If I control what they fear, I control who they are. Let that sink in. 63 times. At that point, you could hear the courtroom's heartbreak. The judge didn't even try to hide the way his hand trembled. The legend, the man the world once praised as a mogul, a genius, a cultural icon, was unraveling page by twisted page. And still, Diddy sat there, stone cold. He didn't blink, he didn't deny, he didn't even look at anyone. But his jaw clenched, his shoulders tense, his world crumbling. Agent Monroe calmly closed the red notebook, looked around the courtroom, and said, "We are no longer dealing with a man accused of wrongdoing. We are dealing with a man who engineered silence, curated submission, and weaponized influence. For decades, it was so quiet in the room you could hear someone stifle a sob. And just when we thought we'd scraped the bottom of this horrific iceberg, Monroe added, 'There's more, the financials,' because of course, there were financials." So, after peeling back the layers of manipulation, mind games, and surveillance, Agent Monroe, cool as ever, laid down the next bomb. "We need to talk about the money, and babes, when an FBI agent says that in a room that already feels like a live crime documentary, you listen." He tapped on a fat stack of files in front of him, but these weren't just spreadsheets or boring bank statements. These were coded ledgers. Files with fake names, offshore accounts, secret crypto wallets, and luxury property deals hidden behind shell companies. And here's where it got sickening. Some of the transactions were clearly linked to payoffs, quiet settlements with dates that matched, you guessed it, major scandals that never hit the press. "We found a pattern," Monroe said. After someone was recorded or compromised within days, a massive transfer would go out, sometimes millions, always from a third-party name, always discreet. One example, a person received $2,100,000, 0 cents from a company based in Malta just 4 days after signing a very suspicious NDA. Their file in Diddy's index? Watch. Stable. Don't agitate. And the courtroom? Absolutely stunned. The judge looked shaken again. The jury? Pale. The press? Dead silent, not even scribbling anymore, just listening, wide-eyed. But Monroe wasn't done. And then, he said with a pause so long it made everyone lean forward, "We found the briefing books." Let me say that again. Briefing books. Dozens of them. Leather-bound, professional, like something out of a CEO's war room. Each book was labeled by quarter and year, just like corporate financial reports. But they weren't about business deals. Oh no. These were psychological profiles. Inside, deep dives on music producers, managers, influencers, actors, athletes, you name it. What were their weaknesses? Addictions, affairs, debts, therapy notes, medical conditions, even mental health breakdowns. How did he get that? Simple. Illegally, because some of this information could have only come from stolen medical files and private communications. One woman in the gallery couldn't hold it anymore and gasped out loud. "This wasn't about protecting himself," Monroe said. "This was about knowing how to break someone before they even realized it." Then came the question everyone had been thinking but too afraid to ask. "Agent Monroe, was there evidence of actual blackmail being carried out?" And Monroe didn't flinch. "Yes, there were emails, text messages, instructions from assistants. One message even said, 'Remind him we still have the Vegas footage. That should end the negotiation.'" The gallery was horrified. Some people started crying. Others just sat in stunned disbelief. But then came the part that made people's blood go cold. Monroe said, "And then we found something called the New Blood Initiative." The room went still. Even the judge slowly leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What is that?" the prosecutor asked, almost whispering. Monroe pulled out a file. "It's a recruitment program," he explained, targeting younger, vulnerable artists, mostly aspiring rappers and dancers, promising them fame, parties, contracts. But it wasn't mentorship. It was a trap. Each recruit had to hand over their phones, sign NDAs, and then a folder was opened on them, like a file, like a possession. "We don't know how many are okay," Monroe said, and for the first time his voice cracked. Some dropped out of the industry. A few made cryptic social media posts before going silent, and others can't be found. That's when the horror truly sank in. This wasn't just some messed up celebrity drama. This was a machine, a system, engineered to hunt, manipulate, control, and erase. A quiet woman in the front row put her head in her hands and sobbed. Monroe looked back down at the red notebook again, shook his head slightly, then said the words that landed like a brick on everyone's chest. This was never about fame. This was about domination. And Diddy, The victims in the gallery, some wept quietly, others sat with tears down their cheeks, not moving, just breathing for the first time in years. They weren't invisible anymore. They weren't whispers or afterthoughts. They were witnesses to the fall. As the judge left the bench, the prosecutors packed up the final files from the vault, and Agent Monroe stepped down from the stand. One last sentence echoed in everyone's mind. This wasn't a vault of secrets. It was a vault of souls. And now that vault was open, and the truth would never be caged again.